Hello. Today we're going to talk about something we should all know about. That is public speaking. If you are a manager, if you are an employee, if you're a leader, you should have the opportunity to share your voice, share your thoughts to an audience. The audience can be small, it can be 5 or 6, or the audience may be 7,000. Whatever is the audience, you should be prepared to effectively public speak. I have, about 50 years plus of public speaking experience. So while I'm not going to say I'm the best speaker in the world or, anything like that, I'm confident that I have the ability to public speak. You should too. And it's not something that you come out of the womb with the capability of doing. It's something that you develop. So let's talk about public speaking. First, before you think about public speaking, there's 3 P's that you should think about. 3 P's. First P is preparation. Every public speech requires preparation. You have to decide what it is you want to talk about. I always say to people, talk about what you know about. Because if you talk about what you know about, then it's easy to share. Easy to share something that you know about versus something you're unfamiliar with. Practice. Yes, practice. Don't just think, I'll just swing it or I'll just go speak. Always prepare and then practice what you prepared. And what's interesting is as you practice, you notice some things that, maybe I'll do this a little differently, or maybe I'll try this. Practice, practice, practice. And here's why. If you prep, if you practice, soon you'll develop proficiency. Proficiency is a combination of confidence. It's also experience. So as you gain confidence, as you gain experience, you are now on your way to effective public speaking. Now, the elephant in the room is this thing, and I'm gonna walk over here because I don't want to emphasize it, but I want to put it out there. This thing called nerves. Now, all of us who public speak may feel a bit of nerves, but your nerves should never debilitate you and keep you from being able to deliver that message. So nerves are okay. Let me say this again. Nerves are okay. If you're nervous, don't say, that's the reason I cannot speak. No, because everyone's a little bit nervous. Some people are a lot nervous, but it doesn't matter because the audience doesn't really care that you're nervous. The audience wants to hear your voice. So we'll spend some time maybe later on another video talking about the whole concept of nerves. But here you are, you're prepping, you're practicing, you're working toward developing proficiency on your message. So let's talk about organizing your speech. These are things that most of us learn perhaps in high school. Perhaps we understand this in writing. Here it is. Every speech has some form of introduction. Today, I'm speaking on public speaking basics. Now, the introduction has multiple parts. Now, some people emphasize that you have to get some type of attention. Now, there's many ways to gain attention from an audience, but we're going to, again, just give the high-level overview of the components of effective public speaking. The other is, as I say, build a little connection. Now, when we're talking about building connection, we're maybe greeting the audience. You may be just letting the audience know that you appreciate them being there. Build a little connection. So whether it's gaining attention, sometimes you do both, or building connection, You don't just start talking about your topic. You want to let the audience know that you are there working with them. And then you want to always remember to give a bit of a preview. And the reason for giving a preview is you are now giving the audience a roadmap for what they're going to hear. Now, this is not describing your entire speech, but it is highlighting enough of your speech so that they can follow along as you are presenting. And all of this is building up to another important point, and that is, while it is your speech, it is your message, it is your information, you always want to think about your audience. What connects with them? What is the way that they can hear your voice? What is something that they will take away from your message? Now, let's go back over here. After you've done your introduction, well, now it's the infamous body, right? Your body is the content of your speech. It is what you are delivering. It is your message. It is your information. So one of the time-tested methodologies is to break this into parts. So in other words, each part of your message, you're organizing around something we call points. Point 1, point 2, point 3. Now, some people say, can you give more points? Yeah, you can. Can you give fewer points? Yes, you can. But a very time-tested approach is to give 3 points. In a speech, organize your information around my first point, my second point, my third point. And then, of course, every public speech has a conclusion. This can never be minimized because something we call the recency effect. The recency effect is, what do people remember from your speech? If they do not take away from your message something you want them to take away, then did your speech really connect? So the conclusion is essential to reinforcing that message that you wanted people to walk away with. So it starts first in the introduction. You've given your topic, your title, you're doing the 3 things: gain some attention, building connection, previewing. You're organizing it in ways people can follow around 3 points. You develop each point, you explain each particular part of your speech. And then finally, you bring it all home with a bit of a summary. Now, this is not where you add a lot of new information, but you do bring back the information that you presented, highlighting it again so they can walk away with remembering what it is that you presented. And oh, by the way, some people say that you should always have a vivid close. We mean vivid, what do we mean? We say something that's memorable. Now that's somewhat optional in the sense that you may not have a vivid close, but basically what we're saying is, what is those last words you want people to walk away with? That can be something you can build around and think about that as your vivid close. Always, always, always thank the audience in your way. I'll never forget one student, she delivered her close where she thank you and she would bow. Now, I can't do that. It's not natural. It won't work for me. But whatever that is that thanking the audience, that is essential to close your speech. And then it allows for people to know it's time to clap. Isn't that a great thing to receive a clap? So a couple more points to detail out here. Between each component of your speech, you have something called transition, okay? Now, a transition is just something that takes you from one point to the next. And you do that between the introduction and the body. You do that between each point. And you do it before you go to conclusion. A transition is something that lets the audience know you're moving from one part to the next. So here it is, the basics of public speaking. We can go into great detail with this, but if you start with this as your framework and you recognize that nerves are okay, And finally, remember, it's your message. It's your message. If it's your message, you can have confidence that you can deliver your message. Thank you very much for listening to Public Speaking Basics. Bye now.